Hi friends, welcome to my channel. My name is Juan. I'm a yarn addict, hence the name Juan the Yarn Addict. And I want to thank each and every one of you guys for stopping by to check out my video today. This is a yarn and crochet channel where we talk about all things yarn and all things crochet. So if that interests you, please sit back and watch my video because today, my friends, I offer you session number 27 of WIPn It with Juan. My friends, this session is a little peculiar, a little different because I called in some help. So what I did was I reached out to a couple of my admins and asked them if they could sit in the background and ask me Q&A questions from my community tab from the members only post. And I'm going to be here just answering all of the questions. So if you have any questions that you would like to have answered, please sound off in the comments below. So the two admins that I have here with me today is Diana and Deanne. And they will be asking me the questions and I will be answering them as best as I possibly can while I'm working on my whips. So I have a few whips here that I'm working on and I can't decide on one. So during the course of our video, I'm going to be working all three of them. So what three are we talking about? Let me just show you. So you guys may or may not know that I am working my vintage variegated yarn project. I am working hexagons. So solid hexagons using strictly vintage variegated yarns. Absolutely beautiful. Look at the stitch definition and all that. Stunning. Love that. So that's the first one. The second one, my friends, is the birthday blanket. So I have my birthday blanket here. It is growing, my friends, and it is getting heavy. So I decided to work on other whips as a palette cleanser. So I believe I'm around 10 skeins in. So we're good there. I'm ready to get that going, but just to break up the monotony of the situation, I have other things that I want to work on as well. So the third project that I want to touch on today is my corner to corner. So I finished the first cake of my panel, and this is what one cake looks like, worked up. That's the end of the first cake right there. And so I have two cakes that I'm trying to choose between, and I can't figure out which one should I do first, and vice versa. So I'm not exactly sure, but these are the two cakes that I want to finish out the panel with. So this has my hot pink in it, the yellow, the white, the orange, all the colors. This here is more mermaid colors. We have the grays, the blues, the teals, the dark purples. No warm colors are in here, like the red, the oranges, or anything like that. So I'm not really sure which one I should lean towards. Something is telling me this one here because it has a mixture of warm and cool colors. So I may just go with this. When we get to it though, friends, because I'm going to touch all three of these projects while I answer all the questions. So before I get into any of the things, I just want to send a huge thank you to both of my admins who agreed to sit in on this video behind the scenes and ask me questions. You will hear their voice in the background asking me the questions, but they are virtually in another place. So there is that. Okay, so let me just go ahead and reposition the camera and we will get this session started. 1 second. Okay friends, so I'm back. I've repositioned the camera and I decided that I am going to work my hexagons. So I've shown it in the previous segment, but what I did not show you was the yarn that I am choosing to start with. So this here is what we are working with right now. This is Red Heart Super Saver in the colorway Primary. So vintage variegated. I don't know what decade this is from, but yeah, so that's what we're working on. And so I believe the very first question is going to come from Deanne. So if Deanne could just ask me the question, go right ahead.
Yes, Karen N asks you, she says you have spoken of your German and Puerto Rican heritage, and she was wondering what family-inspired traditions you remember from childhood that you may still do as an adult. For example, any food or holiday, etc. Things that you might share.
Okay, so that's a really good question. So what kind of traditions do I still carry on based on my Spanish and German heritage? Well, to be perfectly honest with you, over the years, we kind of let them go. I remember what it was like when I was a kid. Um, you know, we had certain foods for certain holidays, as a lot of families do. Um, I really wasn't in touch with my Spanish side as much as I wanted to. I was more in touch with my German side, um, and the traditions that we had there. But as the years passed, we really just stopped doing all of the things. Um, so we used to have an advent calendar that we would experience during the Christmas month, but you know, beyond that, I can't really specify what exactly we've done that I could remember because I was just a little kid. But um, today, in terms of like what we do, um, honestly, nothing. you know, it's not that we don't observe the holiday season. It's just, to me, it's another work day. It's, it's just that time, in my life where I'm just constantly busy. I'm constantly moving, and I don't really make the time like I should to really just observe tradition and do something to observe my heritage, if that makes any sense. So, long story short, nothing. Ideally, I would like to, dig into my German heritage and my Spanish heritage a little more, so that I fully understand, what that's all about. But yeah, that's pretty much that. Thank you, Deanne, for that. So the next question is going to come from Diana. Hi, Diana.
So the next question comes from our very own Jess.
Okay.
Her question is, what would you say is the least expected yet best thing to date about your YouTube journey thus far?
So the best thing thus far,
The most least expected
most least
yet best thing.
okay. So okay, that was a little trivial to
Yeah.
understand at first, but that's a tough question. Unexpected. So I think for me, the growth that I've experienced is the most unexpected thing that I've experienced. Because when I started my channel, if you've watched the very first video, I made my channel for myself. I did not come on here for anyone else, honestly. I just wanted to do this for me. And as my channel grew, I realized, you know what? There's something here. So let me try and embrace this change as best as I possibly can. So it was very unexpected, the growth that I've experienced. And I'm very happy about it. And I'm still trying to adapt to the growth and what that means as a growing channel. I've had a lot of learning curves, a lot of experiences that I just did not know about. I did not understand what it meant to be a channel on the YouTube streets, so I had to very quickly learn what that was like. So there were a lot of components that came with the territory that I did not fully understand. So, in a nutshell, the entire experience was unexpected because I walked into a room not knowing what to expect, and so every day was like a new adventure. It still is, honestly. But yeah, I'm very humbled and very grateful for what's been going on so far and what continues to happen. I just know that it's my intentions to just allow everything to happen organically. So whatever that means for me or my channel, that's just what it is. And as far as the expectations and expecting the unexpected and all of that, I guess, comes with the territory. So yeah, that's pretty much it. My channel and its growth is pretty much the answer to that question. So thank you for that. Hopefully I answered that. Um, so the next question is going to come from Deanne.
Yes, Kim S has a couple of questions. The first one is, what is the biggest lesson you've learned so far in your YouTube journey?
Okay.
And she also asks you, what's one thing you know now that you wish you had back when you first started in September?
Okay. So I may have to ask you to ask me the second part of that question, because I don't want to miss any part of this. So the first question is what again? I just want to make sure I get it right.
Yes, what is the biggest lesson that you have learned so far in your YouTube journey?
Okay. The biggest lesson I've learned thus far in my YouTube journey is that my content matters. I was always so worried about the validity of what it is that I brought to the table, because if you're watching a crochet channel, you're either a new crocheter wanting to learn more, or you're an experienced crocheter wanting to learn more. And I always wondered, was my content, was what I brought to the table valid? And so that's pretty much the answer to that question. Um, yeah, nail on the head. That's pretty much what it is. And what was the second part?
The second part is, what's one thing you know now that you wish you had known in September 2023 when you pushed your button for the first time?
I wish I knew how to navigate the YouTube streets. I really wish I knew what that meant, the YouTube streets. I didn't even know that was a thing when I pressed my button. There's a lot of things that I wish I knew when I pressed the button that I just was not prepared for. I studied as much as I could with like public speaking and practicing enunciation, and I practice all of that. But when you press that button and you sit in front of the camera, it's almost like all of that goes away. So, you know, there's a lot that I wish I knew before pressing the button. But the important part of all of it is that I wound up learning so much on the job that I'm kind of glad that I didn't know what I knew. I'm glad that I didn't know what I know now, if that makes any sense. So I think everything happens for a reason, and I'm glad that things happened the way that they did. So there's that. So the next question is going to come to us from Diana.
Okay, so the next question is from Carolyn C.
Okay.
Is there a pattern that you have tried multiple times that you just couldn't do?
Okay. 2, 3, 4, 5. So multiple times a pattern. So it's a simple question, but it's kind of loaded because it's a generalized question. Honestly, no. And the reason I'm giving a no is because after multiple tries, I put it in timeout. I move on to something else because I feel like my skill set probably isn't where it should be to tackle that. So I'll come back to it. But nothing in particular comes to mind. No. It's not that, I was able to identify and accomplish everything I set out to do. It's just that once I realized that there were patterns that I could not do, I just left it alone, and I didn't go back to it over and over and over again. I just, okay, my skill set isn't where it should be for that particular pattern, and let me just move on. Do any names of patterns come to mind? Yes. There's one in particular. It is a shawl, and I believe it's called Ceylon tea. It's the Ceylon tea shawl, and you use a very, very thin, lightweight yarn, and you use a very, very tiny little hook. and that is way outside of my comfort zone. Just the yarn and the hook alone is just way outside of my comfort zone. Can I read patterns? Of course. Can I read charts? Of course. But trying to connect the dots with that thin thread-like yarn is very difficult for me. So that's just an example of something that I'm like, time out. I'll revisit this when I'm more comfortable working with that kind of yarn. So hopefully I answered the question. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, so next, Deanne.
Yes. Diane M asks, how often do you run into fans when you are out shopping, and does that stress you out or is it fun?
Okay, very good question. So Delaware is a small state. We're not very big. We have just over 1 million people, and I knew it was bound to happen where I would run into people that watch YouTube and that may or may not notice me, and yes, it has happened. So at my local yarn store, Joann's, I get people who come up to me and they know who I am. And at first it was a little disturbing because I'm not used to people just coming up to me. But now they do. They come up to me. They're like, hey, Juan the Yarn Addict. Are you getting some yarn? You getting the deals and steals, Juan? And so I get that a lot from the workers because they're subscribed to my channel. I talk about my channel all the time, and yes, so there's that. But in terms of like viewers that I just happen upon, it's happened, I believe, twice since I pushed the button. And in both cases, it was very, very amicable, very friendly. They were very nice. They came up to me. They were like, hey, you're Juan the Yarn Addict, right? And I'm like, yes. And, you know, they wanted a picture with me. They wanted to just ask me some questions. They wanted me to look at their yarn that they had with them and give them some suggestions and advice and things. And it was a very pleasant experience. I really enjoy that. So, yeah, I really wasn't put off by it. Thankfully, I haven't had any negative experiences in the public regarding what it is that I do on YouTube. So, yeah, I look forward to more happy meets like that. So, yeah, thanks for the question. Okay. Before you guys ask the next question, I'm going to place the video on a brief pause to just make sure we save the data. Okay? So, I will be right back. Okay, friends, so we are back, and everything's saved, so we're good. All right. So the next question is going to be from Diana. So go ahead, Diana.
So the next question comes from Jeremy D.
Okay.
What is your most memorable moment crocheting with your aunts and grandmother?
I've had a lot of memorable moments, if I'm being honest. So with my aunt, the most memorable moment that comes to my mind is our trips to Woolworths. So obviously it's not a thing now, but Woolworths was a place that we went for our yarn. And at the time, I remember going, and there was an entire wall of Karen 1 pound that also had on one side of the wall Red Heart Super Saver and Bernat Super Value, and it had Sayel yarn and a lot of the yarns that are discontinued now. And we would be in there for a good hour just comparing and contrasting colors. It really wasn't so much about the price back then, it was more about the colors, because honestly, friends, yarn was more expensive now than it was back then. It was more affordable back then. So I remember in my experience with my aunt buying a Karen 1 pound for under $5. And that's a lot of yarn, you know, all things considered. I mean, I guess back then it was a lot, $5, because your regular skeins were $1 and some change. So to get a pound of yarn for $5, I mean, it was a good deal, but you know, we didn't have back then what we have now. Coupons and, you know, discount days and things. The price that we sell on the shelf is what it was, unless there was a discount sale or something like that. I don't know. But anyway, me and my aunt would go into Woolworths and we would shop the yarn, and then on the other side of Woolworths was a little restaurant where they made burgers and they made milkshakes and things, and we used to get our yarn and have a milkshake and take the bus back home. So we used to do that every Saturday. It was our thing. Only we did it. And if you're not aware, I am one son of a lot of siblings, and all the other siblings are females. I have all sisters. So for me to have my aunt alone at Woolworths buying yarn was a big thing to me. So I really, really enjoyed that experience. With my grandmother, the experience that I've had with her is very different. So my grandmother and I would sit in her living room together. It would just be us, and I would sit literally right in front of her, and I'd watch her crochet, and she would purposefully have me right in front of her to watch the stitches. She would always tell me, Juan, watch the stitches. And she was a right-handed crocheter, so I would watch her stitches and see I'm a left-handed crocheter, so she would be on the same side. So I mirrored everything she did. I never thought to turn it around and work the other side. So I was always like this, copying her. And that's how this happened, because I don't know if I've ever mentioned this, but I'm a left-handed crocheter, but I'm a right-handed knitter. And so I didn't learn knitting the way that I did crochet. So I don't know if that has anything to do with the reason why I'm a left-handed crocheter, but yeah. So those are the memories with my two favorite yarny folks in my family. So there's that. Next is from Deanne. Go ahead, Deanne.
Yes. Sherry A asks you, have you seen the Taylor Swift granny stitch dress and all of the inspired by tutorials and patterns?
I have. And how awesome is that those fashions are being brought forward in our day and age? What was the common constant back in the day is now a fashion trend. You know, I think that's awesome. I know for a second there were a lot of people in a hurry to get that pattern out and get that piece of clothing made, you know, and I think it's amazing. I think that everyone rushing to have the Taylor Swift dress is great because it brings up the conversation of crochet, and it makes people aware that, you know, this exists and it's fun and you can make awesome things with it and it's great. So I have seen it, and I have not looked at the pattern. I have no desire to make it, but I love looking at everyone else make it, so that's good for them. So there's that. Next question is from Diana.
From Pen B.
Pen B, okay.
Do you have a favorite kind / type of project to work on or create? If more than one, what are your top 2 or 3?
Okay, so I don't know if you guys know this, but by now, if you are a regular on my channel, you know that I love a good granny square. Anything granny square inspired, I am all about. African daisy grannies, hexagons, squares, you name it, I love the granny. I recently made a whole bunch of these in mercerized cotton. I mean, I have them everywhere. I had an entire makes room filled with granny this and granny that and granny all the things. So that is my number 1 go-to. My number 2 go-to is the moss stitch, either back and forth, in the round, in the rectangle, you name it. I love it. I love doing lots of things with it. I love how it looks. I love the hook that I use. which I use a larger than normal hook because I just love how that looks when it's worked up. So it's great. Um, yeah, those are my top two. Grannies and Moss Stitch in any way. Back and forth in the round, doesn't matter. I love it. And I do want to say about a top three that I haven't really introduced on my channel yet. I really, really like working entrelac in the round. So I haven't really gotten into it, but when I do, I am invested 1000%. I really love doing entrelac. So much so that I had a Nelson Wood hook specifically made for my entrelac. And I'm super excited to get that started. So when that time comes, I will introduce all of that to my channel. But those are the top three. All right. So yeah, next question.
Yes, Amy L asks, she says this may be obvious for some people, but she hasn't made any wearables. She doesn't know how to start to go about it. And her question is, I was wondering how you decide what stitches can go with what other stitches so you can design your own look.
Okay. So as they always say, practice makes perfect, right? So you learn by failure. So you try stitches that you think work, and when you realize they don't, then you know mentally, don't do it. That is the tried, tested, and truest way of knowing for sure. Just do it, do the stitches, see if they work for you, and if they don't work, then you know going forward to not use those stitches. Stitch multiples, again, it's a matter of understanding stitch anatomy and knowing how those stitches fall and what that means for your particular garment that you're trying to make. So, for example, if I am making a pullover sweater, you already know a pullover sweater is something that you traditionally would wear in cooler weather. So you obviously won't wear a pullover sweater in the middle of summer. So, okay, cooler weather, thicker stitches, thicker yarn. It's okay to play around and see what you come up with in terms of, what that looks like. But what you don't want is a pullover sweater full of windows. So what's the point? It kind of defeats the purpose unless it's a fashion trend or a fashion statement. So you want to work with what makes sense. So cooler weather, denser stitches, thicker yarns. The warmer the weather is, the lighter the yarn, the looser the stitches are. So play around with your yarn, play around with your stitches, and see what works for you. So there you have it. Next question.
Next question comes from Child Care Chick.
Okay.
Hi, Juan.
Hi.
I don't know if you've ever said, but are you named after someone, and if so, who?
Okay. Well, so I am named after my father. I am a junior, and my mother has a nickname for me that only she can call me. And my father, when he was alive, he called me that as well. And it is Junior. So that's it. My mom still calls me that to this day. Just, off camera. She doesn't call me Juan at all. It's always Junior. And in sign language, it's JR. She goes like this. So, yeah, that's my name. I'm sticking to it. And so thank you for the question. Yeah, my father. Next question.
Yes, this next one comes from Laura L.
Okay.
And she says, hi, Juan. My question is, what's the most exciting and satisfying part of crocheting for you? And she goes on to give some examples like, is it the planning stage or gathering and finding of supplies, actually working up the project, etc.?
Okay. So that's a very good question, Laura. So before I became a content creator / YouTuber, my favorite part of the process was the planning. So I would play around with stitches, I would play around with yarns and see what worked with what. I pulled out the color wheel, I laid my yarns out, and then I did swatches, I measured, I did all the things, took notes. That was my favorite part. Very, very close number two is actually finishing what I start. There's no better feeling than sewing in your ends once you've finished a project. And you're looking at it and you're like, oh my goodness, I did this. I planned it, I did it, and I finished it, and it is amazing. I remember my first large make that I finished. It felt so great being able to finish that blanket, and I was hooked ever since. That feeling is a rush. Like, oh my goodness, I can't believe I did that. That's great. I need to do another one. So, for me, it's not just one favorite part. There's a favorite, but then there's a very close second. So planning and finishing are the two things. So thank you so much for the question, Laura. I really appreciate it. Next question.
Question comes from Erin,
Okay.
and it's, since you are knitting, what project do you hope to be able to knit in the future?
Okay. So I don't really have high hopes for myself. I am a baby knitter. Like, I can do the basic stitches. I'm still learning to increase and decrease and all of that. I'm learning tension and, the basics. But I want to be able to knit the shawl, the Linus shawl. And I want to use a vintage variegated yarn, and I want to make it all the one color of vintage variegated yarn. I do have it saved already. It's called Earthy. I have more than enough of that yarn. That is exactly the yarn that I want in that Linus shawl. And until I figure it out, that yarn will sit in its bag until I'm ready. But that is the one thing that I want to learn how to knit, and I hope someday that I will be successful in accomplishing that. So fingers crossed. Thank you so much for the question. Let me go ahead and pause to save our data very quickly. Give me 1 second. Okay, friends, so I am back. Let's go ahead and ask the next question.
Yes, the next one comes from AMDE8F, and they ask, can you show us how to carry yarn up the side of a project so that you don't have to weave in ends? And they say they've seen videos but can't get the hang of it.
So yes, the only way that I can really show you guys that is during a tutorial. So a prime example of carrying yarn, that's the term, carrying yarn from row to row, switching colors without having to, I guess, cut off, tie off, however you want to call that. It's definitely possible. They do it in color work, they do it in Grafgans, they do it a lot in mosaic crochet projects. I can definitely do that. I do have projects coming up in the fall that do involve carrying yarn. The projects are completed. I'm just waiting to roll that out on my channel. So when that comes, you will definitely see it. But yes, the short answer to your question is yes, I can show you. So thank you for asking that question. Next question.
Next question comes from Bonnie M. What are your goals/hopes for your channel a year from now?
So my goals/hopes for my channel is for it to continue to be a positive place where people can come and enjoy the fiber arts, regardless of your discipline, whether you knit, crochet, weave, spin, it does not matter. I want you to be able to come here and just enjoy all the things, right? So it's part of my whole mantra, Juan the Yarn Addict and all the things. I even have it on my lid here. Juan the Yarn Addict, Yarn Talk, and all the things. Like, I just want to be able to be a place where people can come and enjoy the fiber arts and not have to worry about anything, and it can definitely be that place. So in a year from now, I just hope that the positivity still is very vibrant and very visible, and that's literally it. I don't really have expectations for my channel other than it being a sustainable place of positivity and a place where we can enjoy the fiber arts. So thank you so much for the question. I really appreciate it. Next, we have Deanne.
Laura RN says, you told us chicken is your favorite food. What's your best or favorite chicken recipe or meal?
So, now, you can make chicken a million different ways, okay? I don't really eat chicken that often, but when I do, I like it with as many vegetables as possible. I love sauteed vegetables, steamed vegetables. I love all kinds of vegetables. I mean, I can't even tell you how exciting vegetables is to me when you pair it with chicken. So, like a good stir fry is great. Green peppers, onions, mushrooms. I mean, you name it, I like it. I can also go the other way and do chicken with steamed broccoli, steamed cauliflower. I'm getting hungry now just talking about it. It's all the things. So yes, I do love chicken with a lot of seasoning. So I use Goya, Session, and a lot of the Goya products that come along with that. So yeah, love the seasoning, love the veggies. Nothing in particular, but I do love my chicken with lots of vegetables. So, an indirect answer for your question. I do apologize, but chicken is chicken. It's universal. All right. Well, thank you so much for that question. Who's next? Deanne or Diana? Diana. Okay.
Next question comes from Loretta D.
Okay.
Can you please tell us what all is involved in starting an Etsy shop?
Okay. So, my experience with starting an Etsy shop might be like everyone else's. It might be obscure. I'm not sure. Because at first, I did not even know what I was doing when I started my Etsy shop. Honestly, I had an Etsy account where I bought a lot of things. And at first I thought, that was the Etsy shop. I just needed to figure out where the tab was to add my things so that people could buy the things that I was selling. But what I didn't understand was there's a whole other side to Etsy. And there's a separate app. And there's just this whole other process that I had no idea. So, there is an app outside of Etsy. It's the Etsy seller app. It looks like the Etsy icon, except it's blue. And you would download that, and it literally walks you through all of the steps that you need to complete before opening your store. So, for me, it was a very positive and quick and fun experience. And yeah, so I think the easiest answer to give you is to download the app and follow the map, the instructions. That's the easiest way. Okay? So I will take one more question, and then we will wrap up this session of Whipping It with Juan. I have been fighting with Yarn Barf here for quite some time, so I didn't get much accomplished, but that's okay. We have a lot of answers to the questions. So go ahead, Deanne.
Mandy Curtis asks, Mandy C. Is there a stitch you struggle with, and what was the hardest stitch to master?
So, the hardest stitch to master for me was the jasmine stitch. I struggled with it for quite some time because of how you have to lay the stitches out. And for me, it's about tension. When you're working that jasmine stitch, your tension has to be on point. Because if your tension's not right, the stitches are wonky and it's unbalanced and lopsided and it makes no sense. So, yeah, for me, it took me a long time to figure out the logistics behind the jasmine stitch. I had to figure out what the anatomy of that stitch looked like when you broke it down. But once I got it. And it was a very good feeling. I believe that every stitch is an easy stitch once you understand the anatomy of it. Once you understand how that stitch works with your hook, all the stitches are easy. They're only hard until you figure out how to understand it. And then once you have that equation solved, you can literally do all of the stitches. So, yeah. Was there an earlier part to that question? I think I got it. Yeah, I did. Okay, good. So, my friends, I am sitting here fighting with this. For some reason, it's like this never-ending knot. I usually get these out quite quickly, but I can't proceed any further with this knot. So I am just going to figure this out off camera. Anyway, if you enjoyed this episode of Whipping It with Juan, please give me a like. Leave a comment if you have any questions that you'd like to see in a future video. And of course, hit that notification bell to stay updated with everything regarding me and my channel. So that is it for this one. And until the next one, guys, take care. Bye-bye.